Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to the Dis-Affamie History podcast, where we'll be speaking about history and as well family history and how history relates in terms of Caribbean people for the present as well as in the past, and how in the past, what that does and brings forth for what we are going through at present and what we can learn from our history, from our family, and take that moving forward. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you like it, please ensure to subscribe, like, and review. Thank you. So I just wanted to thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on to the podcast today to speak about sickle cell anemia, as it is a condition that does run in my family, and as well, at least to be able to discuss what that is, what it means. And if I'll do, right now, I'll just give you a few moments if you wanted to just to briefly introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. My name is Lanre Tunji-Ajayi. I'm the CEO for the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario. I am also the CEO for the Global Action Network for Sickle Cell and other inherited blood disorders. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on to discuss about, as you said, it's an inherited blood disorder. And we'll start off with, you could just provide just a brief overview of sickle cell anemia and how it differs from other types of anemia.
Yes, thank you so much. So sickle cell anemia, or what we also call sickle cell disease, is a genetic, red blood cell disorder. So it affects the red blood cells. It is the most common monogenetic disorder in the whole world. It disproportionately affects people who identify with African ancestry, but it also affects people from South Asia, Mediterranean, Middle East, Caribbean, and so on and so forth. You find that with sickle cell disease, about 300,000 babies or more are born every year globally, and that is far more than any other genetic disorders, any other anemia. And this is one of the reasons why the World Health Organization has designated sickle cell as a public health burden, and have encouraged governments and countries to really do work, raise awareness, and provide programs and services to support citizens in this country with this disease. It's also very interesting to note that of about the 300,000 babies born with this hemoglobinopathy, 150,000 of them live in one single country, Nigeria, in Africa. And so, and I tell you, even in Canada here, a lot of people, that are at risk or having children with sickle cell disease, do not even have a clue if they carry the trait for sickle cell disease. So I know as we go forward, we will talk more about sickle cell traits as well. But in a nutshell, sickle cell disease is a lifelong multi-organ disorder. So it affects every part of the body, the eyes, it will affect, people will be, part of the complications could be blindness, being deaf. It affects every organ, the heart, the kidney, the liver, name it, every part of the body. And you find that, some of patients with sickle cell disease, we also require, organ transplantation because the organs have been damaged. So basically, and why is this so? It's simply because the shape for sickle cell is sickled, just as the word says sickle. It is sickled. It is not round. You can see in this picture here red blood cells supposed to be round and donut shaped, but for sickle cell, it's like the farm equipment sickle, and because
Yeah.
it's sickle, he does not let oxygen, does not have enough oxygen, and they get stuck,
Yeah.
right? Trying to go through for the blood to go through the arteries and so on. And so this is part of the reasons why people will have different complications because the shape of the blood and the blood does not have enough oxygen.
And so when you're saying that when it sickles, it clumps together. So again, for that to be able to move throughout the body again is very
As,
hard as well,
as
right?
it's supposed to do, it's not
Yeah.
able to do that effectively,
No.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so going on to the hereditary condition, can you just walk us through in terms of what that would look like as to how it is inherited from each parent?
Yes, thank you very much. So, again, sickle cell disease is a genetic blood disorder, which means that you have to inherit the gene from your parents. Now, everyone, if you look at the infographic on this page, everyone has two copies of hemoglobin gene.
Hmm.
Some of us will have two copies of the normal hemoglobin genes, which then we will call them as A and A. So the two copies are A and A. And some might have two copies of sickle hemoglobin gene. We call them the S and the S, S standing for sickle. And sometimes, and I think where we do have, so just to take a step back,
Okay.
sickle cell disease, we can say, is a way of Mother Nature trying to protect itself against malaria. So where you will find sickle cell, you find them in malaria endemic regions of the world
Yeah.
traditionally, and then so you find that because the gene kind of mutate, and then you have people that have one copy of the gene, like this guy, this lady here. So they have one normal hemoglobin A, one sickle hemoglobin S, and same thing with the lady. These individuals, even when they live in malaria endemic regions,
Hmm.
they would hardly get malaria because that's
Yes.
what nature has done for them. But then when someone with the two normal hemoglobin or two sickle hemoglobin live in malaria endemic region, they will get malaria. So it's only one copy that actually protects you.
Yeah.
Now, when so somebody that has one copy of normal hemoglobin and one sickle hemoglobin would say typically that they carry the trait, the sickle cell trait
Yeah.
or the sickle cell gene. Now, there is no symptom. It's asymptomatic for most people. That in very rare cases, though, we've seen a few individuals with sickle cell trait that actually live life as if they have the disease. The
Hmm.
amount of the sickle is just very high in their body that
Okay.
they actually go through pain and all those complications as well. But most parts, if you just have the trait, you live a fairly normal life and you might not even know even until you die that you carry
Yeah.
that trait. Now, the problem now arises though when these individuals with trait, one copy of the trait, if they decide to have a baby, or if somebody with one copy of the trait decides to have a baby with someone with a sickle cell, with both genes being sickled,
Hmm.
because the child has to pick a copy of a gene from each parent. So let's use the example of dad as a trait, mom as a trait,
That's right.
and they went to have their first baby. This baby then picked the sickle trait from dad and the sickle trait from mom and came out as a child with sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
So because it got the S gene from each parent. Now, mommy and daddy went back again to have another baby, another pregnancy. And this baby decided to pick one normal hemoglobin from daddy, let's say, and one sickle hemoglobin from mommy. He also is a carrier. And then they went back again, daddy and mommy, and they got pregnant again, and this baby has normal hemoglobin. She got the normal A from daddy, the normal A from mommy, and they can go back again, and the fourth baby can have a trait again. Or it can also be that even though they are both carriers and they have the sickle and the normal gene, that all of their babies could actually be picking the S and the S, the S and the S, the
Yes.
S, or they can be picking the A and the A, or the A and the S. It's it's a toss of the coin.
Yes.
You cannot control it because it's just nature, and they just pick what they pick, right? Even though now we know that with technology, advancing the technology, you can check in pregnancy now if your baby will have sickle cell disease.
Oh,
Uh,
you can. Okay.
you could do that now. They could do those tests for you if baby will have sickle cell trait. So it's very important, as we say, for people to find out. I always say, know your family tree when it comes to sickle cell. People need to find out, they need to know if they have sickle cell trait. Most likely, if someone has sickle cell disease, they would already know because they will be having symptoms and so on and so forth most of the time. But if you have just the trait, you might not know, and you need to get tested to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Canada here, many provinces are screening babies for sickle cell disease, including Ontario. It was approved through our advocacy work in 2006. So every baby born in this province would then be screened for sickle cell disease. They are also screened for sickle cell trait, but they just don't provide the newborn screen in Ontario does not provide the sickle cell trait information voluntarily. They
Okay.
wanted parents to request for that. Right now, parents are not requesting because they don't even know they have to request for that.
Yes.
So, because I mean, I use myself as an example. So I go into the hospital, I have a baby, my baby is healthy, you told me everything is fine. Am I going to really pause and say, oh, by the way, does my baby have sickle cell trait?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So, how much do we even know in this community about sickle cell trait to be asking that question?
Exactly.
So, I believe anyone in Ontario is now getting a lot of people asking that question. And one of the work that we are currently doing is getting the Ministry of Health and Newborn Screening Ontario to start to tell families about their child's sickle cell trait status because it's very important for education purposes
Yes.
and for them to make their own procreation decisions as they're getting older, because they need to know what they are made of. Who am I? My genetic
Exactly.
makeup. It's their information. And if you pricking the baby's ear and taking the baby's blood, why are you not giving the family the information,
Yes.
they deserve to have from that pricked ear whereby you collected their child's blood?
Exactly. Exactly. No, thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate that you were able to break it down to show what are I guess you could say, the combinations that could potentially happen with each pregnancy in terms of with that sickle cell trait being passed down from parent to child. So I know that, the next question is, I know that you had spoken about in terms of with sickle cell itself, um, would you be able to at least to describe, I guess, some of the symptoms that people can have or what can be expressed?
Definitely, sickle cell disease, like I said, is a multi-organ disorder.
Yeah.
It comes with a lifelong complication, and you can see in this picture that is with sickle blood that are not well shaped, and then you can find the round shaped blood. And because of this, you find that the people that have sickle cell disease will go through a lot of different complications. They will have what we call damage to vital organs of the body. There's also the what we call the pain episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And pain is the hallmark of sickle cell disease. Pain is the hallmark of sickle cell disease and is the most felt, right, of all complications, but it's not the only thing. Because remember, we talk about, again, the blood is not flowing as it should.
Yes.
There's blockage, it's stuck, and the sickle blood breaks down faster than normal blood. A normal blood will be about 120 days, and a sickle for somebody who has sickle cell disease maybe about 20 days. So it breaks down faster. All of this causes different complications. It blocks the flow of blood in the blood vessels, and we call that vaso-occlusive crisis when people are experiencing that, right? But like I said, the most felt hallmark of this disease is the painful crisis, and it affects the bones, the joints, and I have
Yeah.
asked the question, people, especially women who have gone through childbirth and have sickle cell disease, which is worse? Childbirth. I've had children, and I know that was painful.
Yes.
Um, and would you compare sickle cell pain to having a baby? And every single one said they would take having a baby any day over the
Yeah.
sickle cell pain. It's just undescribable.
Yeah.
It is excruciating. It is deep bone, and you can't even get to the bone to scratch away the pain. It's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
so it's been compared to terminal cancer pain. There is also another complication that male do have. It's called the priapism, which is a complication to the male organ,
Okay.
male sexual organ, whereby they would have unwanted erection that could last for days or weeks, and it's very painful. Um, it would be an unwanted erection, of course, and
Yeah.
this also because of it's a complication because of the lack of flow of blood to all the vessels of the body. We've seen patients that went blind, deaf. I have one of our members who is completely deaf in one ear and moderately deaf in the other ear. And it's all complications of sickle cell. It causes damage to the heart, the
Yeah.
lungs, like kidney, liver, like stroke, like, and for children, we talk about stroke, we talk about silent stroke. So this is why we also do education in the schools because children could suffer silent stroke, and when they're suffering silent stroke, you might not see even a symptom on time. It might just be as simple as a child who's maybe a 95 average started to get 65.
Yeah.
And the teacher and the parents might say, "Oh, you're playing, you are not focusing," but that's not true. They're actually going through silence. So it's a lot of different complications, and so this is why it's very important, even in the school system, for the educators to be aware of sickle cell when there's a child with sickle cell in their classroom. They need to know what they need to do to ensure that this child does not have what even we call school environment induced crisis,
Yes.
because with sickle cell disease having the wrong temperature, even on you, if it's too hot or too cold, can trigger a crisis, a pain crisis. And in some schools there are the cubicle classrooms. We don't
Hmm.
encourage students to be in cubicle classrooms because that is not going to be helpful. It could trigger crisis, and that will be school environment induced crisis. Many, many people with sickle cell disease will also end up blowing hip replacement and so on and so forth in their lifetime. I know of a young man died last year, but before he died, went through hip replacement 3 times
Wow.
before the age of 25. It's unbelievable what this disease can do. It's a brutal, excruciating disorder, and one that predominantly, like I said earlier, affects people of African ancestry.
Yes.
And so, in many parts of the world, especially in the high resource countries, they consider sickle cell as a black issue, minority issue. But I beg to differ.
Hmm.
If it affects people that live in a country, then it is that country's disease and a problem, and one that they need to do things on, advocate on, and help to improve the health outcome of their citizens who have this disease.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I know that you did speak to this in regards to with sickle cell anemia globally as to the specific regions or populations that are impacted with higher incidence. Can you go a little bit more into just to speak onto this specifics?
Yes, so regions of sub-Saharan Africa carries the highest burden of sickle cell disease, with Nigeria alone as a country, have millions with sickle cell disease in the country, and about 150,000 babies are born every year for just that one
Wow.
country. Closely following the sub-Saharan Africa would be India, like from South Asia.
Yes.
They have about 1.8 million people as of 2018 living with sickle cell disease. And then you also have, like in Brazil, for instance, about 70,000 people living with sickle cell disease. So this disease is not just a black disease or
Exactly.
African disease. It's a global disease, and one that the global community needs to do more work on. United Nations has recognized sickle cell disease as a global health priority.
Hmm.
They are actually, doing some work now in sickle cell disease, especially in low resource countries. But I believe that more needs to be done globally and also in countries. And to come back to our country, Canada here, some of the work that we have done to raise awareness is we have worked to get at the Parliament in Ottawa for them to recognize June 19, which was a day that was designated by World Health Organization as a day to raise awareness for sickle
Hmm.
cell. We got Ottawa to enact the day as law, and the day received rare acclaim in 2018. In Ontario here, Ontario has the largest number of people with sickle cell in Canada.
Okay.
I would say nationally, about 6,500 or more people have sickle cell disease. In Ontario alone, has close to 4,000 of that population live in a province. And so we have to do a lot more work really than any
Yeah.
other province when it comes to sickle cell. So we also got a day enacted to raise awareness of this disease among the members of provincial parliament
Yeah.
so they can better understand, what our community, sickle cell community, what we're dealing with, right? And the day got enacted in 2021 and is official, as Sickle Cell Awareness Day in Ontario.
Which is
Um,
great. Which is great.
yes, thank you. And that's the raise awareness. And so we're also working with our Ministry of Health, and it's great that the ministry is working with organizations like Sickle to really see how do we improve the quality of life of people with sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
Quality standards for sickle cell disease has been developed. The only problem with that, though, is that the standards are developed. How do you get the clinicians to
Yes.
use them and to be accountable for the quality of care that they provide? And that is part of the conversation we continue
Yeah.
to have with Ontario Health to ensure that we just don't have this, we just don't have the guidelines, but the clinicians are using this guideline to ensure that when our patients show up in the hospital, they are given the right care. I told you the climate right
Exactly.
now. When a sickle cell patient goes into an hospital, be it in Ontario or in New Brunswick or in Nova Scotia, wherever in the country, there are some clinicians that are well versed in sickle cell and know exactly what to do. They follow the order set, they follow the guidelines, and they
Yeah.
treat the patient. And some even have individual care plans provided to their sickle cell patients because you can't put everybody in the same basket.
That's right.
However, we have some patients who doesn't have interest and who will be subjective in the care that they are providing to patients so they can look at a patient that walks into emergency that says, I'm in excruciating pain.
Yes.
And they said, well, I don't think they're in pain. I think they're just taking opioids. They're just
Hmm.
taking. And so it depends on who you meet. And this is why we're saying accountability is important.
Yes.
They have to be accountable for the quality of care that they do provide. And so,
No,
sorry, yes, go
no,
ahead.
go, no, I just want to say that was, that's definitely key because, what you mentioned in terms of that scenario of somebody coming into the ER of excruciating pain and they're not being believed and thinking that it's for something else when it's not.
Yes, definitely. It's very important to keep up this work, not only in Ontario. I mean, we're achieving great strides in Ontario. We just recently got the ministry to fund, provide through a proposal that the organization put together. We were able to get the ministry to provide funding for all 7 centers in the province to truly bring these centers to become comprehensive in nature and provide adequate care for patients. Right now we are working to get more sites, to get the ministry to establish more clinics for sickle cell across the province. So our patients can get care close to home and the care could be quality care.
Exactly. So are you saying right now, like in the province of Ontario here in Canada, there's only certain centers that are available in terms of with the treatment?
There are
Seven
seven
major.
specialized centers, but we are asking for the government to add 3 more.
Yes.
So for instance, there is no center in Windsor. People that live in Windsor, we have to travel to London, and what our families do sometimes is they just cross to Detroit because it's 5 minutes to them. They don't have to drive 2.5 hours to London. So we're asking for a site in Windsor. We're asking for a site in Thunder Bay. You don't have to fly from Thunder Bay because you have to sell. And we're asking also for a site at Credit Valley because that area can also use phone. So to make it 10, and then that at least will improve and will help ensure that families are able to receive care close to home.
Yes, absolutely. That would make a huge difference, especially what you just mentioned about Windsor, and they have to go across the border to the United States, to Detroit, for treatment. Wow. So, and then I guess this leads into the next question in terms of not only to the patient's, the individual's quality of life, but again, the challenges, and this would definitely be one of the challenges that families face in order to help to manage the condition, right?
And this is why I would say, this is Timmy, that having a child with sickle cell disease is so expensive in terms of the time, the resources, and even your mental health, your emotions. For you to say, I didn't know I carried a trait, I just had this child out of ignorance. You shouldn't have a child with sickle cell disease out of ignorance. It will take a toll on yourself, on the child itself. And I've seen and heard children asking their parents, why did you do it? Because they're the one that's suffering. We give back to them, but they're the one that's suffering. They're the one that have to go through pain all the time and have to have their organs damaged. And then they wake up one day in excruciating pain and they say, Mommy, did you know that you will have a child with sickle cell if you have a child with daddy? Why did you do it? And to say, I didn't know, it's also equally disheartening because it was out of ignorance, right? So this is why I would say, number one, to get tested for sickle cell trait, if you carry the trait in this province and many provinces in this country, is free with your OIP card.
Yes.
That's the first thing. Get tested. Even if you're a grandmother, get tested. And if you carry the trait, you might not have a child or grandchild with sickle cell disease yet, but if the trait is in the family, that is a good opportunity to keep on saying to grandchildren and children's children, get tested before you start having your own children, because the gene is there. And because your children doesn't have sickle cell disease doesn't mean they don't have the trait. And if they also marry people with a trait, then your grandchildren will have the disease. And that's what it is. So we all have to be educated. That's number one. Number two, yes, managing sickle cell disease is not easy. It might require a lot of time off school for the students and time off work for parents. Some parents have to just sit at home. They had home parents because it's just a lot. And employer can only also give you, time off, time off, time off for so long because they also want productivity at work. So it's a lot. And to
Yeah.
me, sickle cell disease is a disability for many, not for all, but for most. And it has to be recognized also as a disability in that context, even with the government with Ontario Disability Tax Credit and all of those things as well. But currently, for most people, the questions that comes with the Ontario Disability Tax Credit and all of that, they will not qualify. Because sickle cell disease is so different, even though it's a
Yes.
disability. That's one. Now, management. Part of what we do to ensure that we reduce unnecessary and preventable complications. I myself lost my brother to preventable sickle cell complications, and that's why I got into this space to help ensure that we do not have, we do not continue to lose our young people to preventable complications of sickle cell disease. Um, and I, and so as such, the organization established what we call disease management program, Learning for Life, whereby we provide education on different sickle cell related topics and so on for families to better understand this disease and know how to prevent complications that they don't want to have. And we also have a healthcare provider e-course as well that we launched this year. Was launched this year. Prior to this year, and thanks for, while COVID has a lot of bad rap, and we don't want COVID, and
Hmm.
it would be best not to have COVID, but it also provided new ways of doing things.
Yes.
And one of them is before we would do things like lunch and learn in selected hospitals, and we can only go to one hospital maybe every 3 months. But with the COVID, we learned we have to move virtually to do stuff. And so we started to offer the e-course, which then clinicians from different hospitals can plug in at their own time, in their own space, and complete this course, right? And that will help to them to better understand sickle cell disease and then provide better care for their patients living with this disease. So that also is some of the programs that we're doing to help manage,
Okay.
help parents with managing, because if healthcare providers don't understand the disease, they will not give your children or your young adults or yourself the right care at the right time. So it's very
Hmm.
important that they are well conversant with sickle cell disease. Now, in terms of available treatment, the one, what I call lifesaver and I call a miracle drug,
Yes.
hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea is, that drug was actually meant for um, cancer. It was a cancer drug.
Yeah.
And what it did for cancer was to change the shape of the blood for some specific blood cancer.
Okay.
And so some smart genius said, let's try with sickle cell.
Hmm.
Bingo! It was a game changer. So what he did then is to change the shape of the sickle blood to a more round shape. And by doing that, it reduces the thickness of the blood, it can flow better. And what that does, it reduces the complications, it reduces the pain crisis,
Yeah.
it gives you a better quality of life. And what the pattern hydroxyurea with is fetal hemoglobin. So every one of us, we are born with fetal hemoglobin, but as we get older, maybe by 1 year of age, we lose most of our fetal hemoglobin, but a little bit left in our body.
Yeah.
But there are some special people that still retain a very high fetal hemoglobin, even as adults. And for those that have sickle cell disease, is a blessing because by they retaining this high fetal hemoglobin, which is not sickle blood,
Hmm.
it's a baby blood that is not sickled, they then compensate and they can function with this blood. And I know one person that has an extremely high fetal hemoglobin like that, who has not, at 42 years of age, never been on one single admission for sickle cell, never had a pain crisis, never had to go to any hospital for anything. So this is what hydroxyurea is patterned of, fetal hemoglobin, baby hemoglobin, and to increase that. And so that changes the shape of the sickle blood, and that allows people to have improved health outcomes. That's one. There's also bone marrow transplantation,
Yes.
which, well, what is great, I mean, that is you have to find a match. Mm-hmm. And that could be a barrier, finding a match. And then also, they have to also check to make sure that the individual is a good candidate for this procedure. But if an individual is, it's amazing, because then you'll be cured of sickle cell disease, right? You provide a cure. And the most innovative, still in the pipeline, researchers are working on, is the gene editing CRISPR therapy.
Okay.
That is when they just take your own gene. You don't need to worry about a match. Mm-hmm. Take your own gene out of your body, they fix that gene, and they reintroduce it back into your body. Amazing.
Yeah.
When that is available widely for families and people to do, I know it will be expensive, but he will be the ultimate game changer. Because there will be issues around if you're rejecting the transfusion and all of, and all of that. There won't be issue of not finding the right match and all of those things. The donor host graft, rejection will not be there. All of those things, because it's your gene from your body that is being worked on and reintroduced. So these are the treatment options available for sickle cell disease at the time. Also, yes, there's blood transfusion. Some of our families, they might not be good candidates for even hydroxyurea. They might not find a match yet for bone marrow transplantation. They might be blood transfusion, hereditary program that they will need to do, and their doctor hematologist will give them the frequency at which that they need to come for these transfusion programs. And so, so there are different options in ensuring that our families are able to live, healthy lives.
No, that's good to know that those are the major treatments at this time for sickle cell anemia, and not just that it's a narcotic-based or opioid-based treatment initiative. So, just in closing here with, your organization, what are the ongoing efforts and initiatives that you are, your group is doing in terms of raising the awareness about sickle cell anemia and further advocating for individuals impacted by this disease?
So one of the most important work that we do is advocacy. We advocate, and like I alluded to earlier, we continue to advocate with the ministry to get resources and programs in place for people with sickle cell disease. We're actually going to be launching a pilot program with London Health Sciences, whereby we will be having a patient well-being coordinator support patients while they are on admission in the hospital, so they get care at the right time in the hospital. And then this role, we also follow them after they are discharged and provide them with support in the community, even with job searching and all of those things, right? So
yes,
that's part of what we do. We also advocate for them with workplaces, because sometimes they experience stigma and discrimination based on their disease, and also with schools, right? We provide counseling services for our patients. As you know, there's a huge mental health component to sickle cell disease. It can cause depression and all of that. We also provide like I said earlier, those educational programs, preventative care for sickle cell disease. We embark on research. We did in 2021 a research to identify hospitals in Ontario that are providing suboptimal care for sickle cell disease. And that led us to be able to work with more hospitals in Ontario to improve the quality of care that they are providing. We just received a funding of $194,000 from the Public Health Agency of Canada to conduct a study on vaccine equity in sickle cell disease. So we are very heavy into research. Mm-hmm. We also believe in saving secure blood supply. We are always looking for people to become, like blood champions and support, blood donor drives that we do. For instance, I'll tell you that number one, let's go to be her blood partner. Like I said, some of the patients, their treatment option is blood transfusion. Mm-hmm. So we have partnered with Canadian Blood Services to get people to donate. But what we ask first is to first of all join our team, right? So this year we're really looking for 20 people to give blood. That's all. If we get more, that's great. But we're looking for a minimum of 20 people to give blood in 2023. All these people need to do is to go on blood.ca of the Give Blood app, look mm-hmm. for menu item partner, join a team. You can put the name of our organization, Sickle Cell, our group of Ontario, in there. It will bring us out. Or you can put our partner ID, which is the 6327620. It will break us out, and you can register with us. Once you finish this and you are under our team, then you can then go back then and book your first donation if you've not done before. If you've done before, then all your blood donation efforts will then be under our team and we can achieve our goal. We need blood. It's so important because, and I'll tell you why it's important. And blood is not blood. We always say, if you cut me, don't I bleed? And blood mm-hmm. is blood. But for sickle cell disease, it's not so. And this is because there is phenotypical relations that we have to be mindful of. So we all have antibodies. And people with sickle cell disease have to get blood from their community. Otherwise, they will keep on developing more antibodies that they do not need to develop. And that would then narrow the where they can get blood and who they can get blood from. Yes. But if they get blood from their own community, it's less likely to develop antibodies to those blood, and that will help them to be able to continue to get blood. And so then the blood has to be phenotypically matched. So phenotype blood. Mm-hmm. So that is closely matched to your DNA and so on, not just the O positive, O negative, B, A. We're not looking at that alone. We're looking at the phenotype matching of the blood. And so the more we get people from Black community, for instance, given blood, the more Black community will be able to have the right blood. For those that have sickle cell, people from Indian communities, they give blood, then they will have the right blood. For them, people from, Mediterranean and those also. But for us, we truly want, our community to really be able to, receive the right blood mm-hmm. at the right time, right? So.
Yes, absolutely. That's great that the Canadian Blood Services has that. And this is national, right? It's just not for this particular province?
It is national.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll put the link in the show notes as well so people can...
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, and was there any final thoughts or, action calls? I know you put a lot in there as to what you guys are doing, but is there anything else that you wanted to finally leave the listeners or the viewers with in regards to sickle cell?
Thank you. Well, what I would like to say is that, without funding, we can't do work that we're doing. It's very important for us as an organization to continue to raise funds. And so one of the things that we're doing will be we're having our annual walk marathon. If people want to join us, I'm going to just go on that page quickly. If people want to join a marathon, they are welcome to. We are having one in Toronto. We are having one in Hamilton. I'm sorry, my computer is a little bit slow, but we are having one in Hamilton as well. And people can join to raise funds and support, the marathon that we are doing. The Toronto Marathon is on October 15th. And the steps to register is there on our website, and the Hamilton Marathon is on November 4 and 5. And the steps are very fun. So that is how I would leave. And for people who want to also learn more about sickle cell disease, we're having our annual summit for sickle cell disease on November 3rd and 4th. So if want to learn more, it's free. It's at Mississauga. I think it's Delta Hotel in Mississauga, but information is on our website. So we look forward to having everyone. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Lanre, for coming on and to be able to speak to sickle cell anemia, as this is highly impactful. And I will put all of those informations in the show notes so people can be able to access them, whether they watch or they listen to this particular podcast. But again, I appreciate your time for coming on and speaking to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Hoped you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and write a review for the episode wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you.